As soon as we're speaking about a person who has something to do, whether it's being quiet, transcending the mind, watching your thoughts, doing self inquiry, driving a car, getting the groceries, volunteering at homeless shelter, going to school to stop climate change, any of those things, including self inquiry, that's all um, relative teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You are freedom itself. There is nothing to do. You are simply the awareness of everything unfolding. That's pointing to the absolute. And even the pointing is a doing in the relative. But what? Sometimes that's called absolute teaching, but it's actually anything spoken is not absolute teaching. It's the actual recognition and being the awareness, which you already are. I mean, this is where the language falls apart because the relative is based in duality. So you have to speak that way, being what you are. Well, you can't help but be what you are, and there's no you there anyway. But I am that. There's again this duality, I and that. Is that? But it's trying to say, no, no, no duality. It's just that is looking, is that is aware of, and that you are, and that is silence, and that is innate freedom, and that you can't get. There's no action that brings that, and that you can't lose because there's no action maintaining it. It simply is, and everything else can be lost, maintained, gotten. But as soon as we speak about, doing and all of that, then that's all relative teaching. But there's no like, oh, if you're doing that, you're not doing this. It's not. Mm-mm. Even an I thought, it's just an I thought, like everything else. So there's an I thought that's necessary for you to get into the car and drive the car. Fine, if you feel that there is. But many people have driven cars with no I thoughts. But they're not people driving cars with I, how do you speak? It's like cars have been driven without thoughts. Raman has eaten many a meal, cooked many a meal, went for many walks, and he's never walked or eaten or anything because there's no I there for him to be doing any of that. All of that just happened. But it doesn't even mean that he didn't have to have an I thought for that. But it's not necessary to have an I thought for that. But if you have an I thought, it's still no one doing it. Just that no one has an I thought there. So it's not about like, oh, some of us have stories. We all stories. It's not fine. It's fine. In terms of story, you just, you know, you add to it something positive. That's the antidote teaching. Because usually the stories tend to be negative. If they're not negative, then there's no need to change anything. But I'm not good enough. Add in, be rational, compare yourself to everybody else, you're fine. Oh, okay. So that now it just kind of everything falls away. Now there's no need to think. There is really no need to think about any of this. No need to think about any of this. Like if there's an impulse to go save the planet, get up, do what you're supposed to do what needs to be done. You don't even have to think about it. You just do it. But if there's thinking about it as part of the process, that doesn't imply any like, oh, we're thinking about it. So what? It's just a story. Yup, that's what it is. It's a story, but you don't have to live without a story in that way of no story arising. It's the seeing what it is that is the transcendence of it. You know, you can have moments when there's no story, and then that makes it obvious that when the story arises that it's just a story, right? So Papaji used to say, like the very first satsang I ever attended with him, I had seen him the day before, like with a few friends, but the next morning we went to satsang, and I remember the very first thing I heard him say was, "I tell you to just be quiet, simply to appraise you of the fact that you are quiet itself. That's the only reason I'm telling you to just be quiet and have that experience of being quiet, is so that you get that you are, by definition, quiet itself. Because it's easier to see that, to notice that. It doesn't mean that noise can't happen later, or thoughts, or, or discussion, or whatever, or identification even. If that happens, it's identification happening in silence itself. It's preferable, like, oh, I'm recognizing my thoughts. But even that, oh, I'm recognizing my thought. That's story.
You should
I,
do more of this.
okay, let's do more of this. Definitely, let's do more of this, whatever this is.